What if everything holding you back from happiness isn't the world, but your own fear of judgment? Discover why true freedom comes not from approval, but from the courage to be unapologetically yourself. Welcome to Summaries, where every great book is transformed into powerful, clear, and easy-to-digest audio summaries. Save time, learn faster, and upgrade your mind, one book at a time. This is Summaries, Wisdom Made Simple. The Courage to be Disliked book by Ichiro Kishimi. A conversation that changes everything. The Courage to be Disliked is written as a dialogue between a philosopher and a young man seeking answers about life, happiness, and meaning. Through this conversational format, the book explains complex psychological principles in a way that feels personal, relatable, and practical. The philosopher introduces the key idea immediately. Happiness is not something granted by circumstances, approval, or past experiences. It is a choice that each individual can make. This challenges a fundamental assumption held by many, that we are shaped, defined, or trapped by our past, by society, or by other people's expectations. The young man represents the reader, skeptical, burdened by past failures, socially conditioned to fear judgment, and unsure if he can truly control his own life. Through the dialogue, the philosopher gradually dismantles these limiting beliefs, replacing them with Adlerian principles, which emphasize self-determination, courage, and responsibility. The core philosophy, Adlerian psychology. The book is grounded in Alfred Adler's psychology, a school of thought that focuses on individual psychology. Every person is unique, and behavior is goal-oriented, not determined by past trauma. Purposeful behavior. People act according to their perceived goals, not simply as reactions to experiences. Social interest. True happiness is found in community and contribution, not in self-centered striving. Separation of tasks. Understanding what belongs to you versus what belongs to others is essential for freedom and self-determination. Adlerian psychology contrasts sharply with Freud's emphasis on past trauma or deterministic views of human behavior. Instead, it emphasizes choice, courage, and present-focused action. Key premise: happiness is a choice. Early in the dialogue, the philosopher challenges a core assumption of the young man, that life is controlled by circumstances, past experiences, or other people's opinions. Instead, he explains, all unhappiness is interpersonal relationship problems. In other words, feelings of frustration, anxiety, or inferiority are largely caused by how individuals relate to others, not by external events themselves. By addressing these relationships and cultivating courage, individuals can choose happiness regardless of past hardships or societal pressure. The philosopher stresses that happiness is not something to be achieved through external validation. Approval from others is fleeting and unreliable. Relying on it enslaves us to other people's expectations. True happiness comes from living authentically according to one's values and choosing one's path. Breaking free from determinism, past does not define you. One of the most revolutionary ideas presented early in the book is that the past does not determine the future. The young man, like many of us, initially believes that childhood experiences, mistakes, or traumas dictate present limitations. The philosopher counters this by introducing teleology in Adlerian psychology. Humans are motivated by goals and purposes, not by past causes. While the past may influence perception, it does not force behavior. Instead, a person who failed in school is not doomed to failure. A person who experienced rejection is not destined for loneliness. The book emphasizes that people have the power to reinterpret their experiences and choose new directions, provided they have the courage to act and take responsibility for their choices. Self-limiting beliefs and the life lie. The philosopher explains that people often construct self-limiting beliefs, which Adler calls life lies. These are stories individuals tell themselves to avoid responsibility and vulnerability. Common examples include, I can't be happy because of my past. Others will never accept me if I show who I really am. I am defined by my failures or shortcomings. These beliefs are comforting illusions. They excuse inaction and fear, but they block personal growth. To live freely, one must confront these life lies and choose courage over comfort. The interpersonal origin of problems. A central idea that emerges is that all personal unhappiness originates from relationships with others. Discontent often comes from comparing oneself to others, seeking approval or recognition, holding grudges, feeling inferior or superior. The philosopher explains that superiority and inferiority complexes are constructed within social contexts. One may feel superior to assert dominance or inferior to justify passivity. Both are defensive strategies that prevent authentic engagement with life. True freedom and happiness require letting go of both the need to dominate and the need to be recognized. Separation of tasks. What is yours? What is not? Another foundational concept introduced is the separation of tasks. The philosopher emphasizes, most problems stem from trying to interfere in tasks that belong to others, or letting others interfere in tasks that belong to you. Understanding which tasks belong to us and which belong to others is essential for reducing anxiety, avoiding unnecessary conflict, gaining autonomy and courage. For example, other people's opinions are their tasks, not yours. Your responsibility is to act according to your values, not to control how others respond. This principle becomes a recurring theme throughout the book, forming the backbone for interpersonal freedom. Interpersonal relationships, the source of freedom and unhappiness. The philosopher emphasizes that most human problems are interpersonal, not internal. Conflict, anxiety, and dissatisfaction often arise from seeking approval from others, comparing ourselves to peers, striving to meet societal expectations. Brownian-style self-help often focuses on internal reflection, but Adlerian psychology takes a relational approach. True change requires examining how we interact with others. The young man struggles to see how his unhappiness stems from his relationships, but the philosopher explains, you feel inferior not because of others, but because you compare yourself to them. By shifting the perspective from self-blame to relational awareness, one gains insight into the real sources of dissatisfaction, inferiority complex, and the drive for superiority. The book introduces two major psychological patterns. 1. Inferiority complex, rooted in feelings of inadequacy, leads to passivity, avoidance, and dependence on external validation. Individuals may feel they must conform to avoid criticism. 2. Superiority complex, a defensive strategy to mask feelings of inferiority, leads to dominance, competition, and controlling behavior, often manifests as arrogance or overachievement. Both complexes are attempts to avoid the courage to be disliked, that is, the willingness to act according to one's values without seeking approval. They are socially conditioned defenses, not inevitable traits. The courage to be disliked. The core message is clear. Freedom and happiness require the courage to be disliked. Seeking universal approval limits choice and creates dependency. To live authentically, one must accept that not everyone will approve of your choices. Separate your tasks from the tasks of others. Act according to personal values rather than external expectations. The philosopher explains that approval seeking is a trap. It fosters anxiety, stifles individuality, and prevents authentic relationships. True freedom comes from detaching from others' judgments. Separation of tasks, a key to social freedom. The concept of separating tasks is revisited here in detail. Every individual must determine what is their responsibility, what belongs to others. For example, your task, expressing your honest opinion respectfully. Others' task, whether they accept or reject your opinion. By focusing on one's own tasks, individuals avoid unnecessary anxiety and conflict. This principle allows people to interact freely without being controlled by others' reactions. Living in the present. Past trauma is not destiny. A major point the philosopher emphasizes is that trauma does not determine destiny. While the young man initially believes past failures limit his potential, he learns. Experiences only shape perception, not action. People act according to the meaning they assign to past events. Blaming the past for current unhappiness is a form of self-handicapping. This insight empowers the young man. He can choose new goals, take responsibility for his actions, and cultivate happiness starting now, not later. Contribution and social interest. Happiness is not only personal, it is social. The philosopher stresses social interest. One becomes happy by contributing to others. Adlerian psychology teaches that fulfillment comes from cooperation, community involvement, helping others. creating meaningful connections. Living solely for oneself or seeking admiration without contribution leads to loneliness and dissatisfaction. Social interest transforms relationships and reinforces courage. Handling judgment and comparison. Comparison is a major barrier to freedom. The philosopher explains that people often feel inferior because they compare themselves to others' achievements, appearances, or approval. To overcome this, stop comparing yourself. Focus on your own tasks. Recognize that everyone has unique paths. Accept that being disliked is natural and necessary for authenticity. Comparison and approval seeking are inseparable from inferiority and superiority complexes. By separating tasks and embracing social interest, one escapes this destructive cycle. Freedom through courage. The philosopher reiterates the idea that freedom is inseparable from courage. Courage to act independently. Courage to risk being disliked. Courage to engage socially. Courage to choose happiness despite uncertainty. The young man realizes that seeking comfort or approval is easier, but courage is the gateway to freedom and self-determination. Practical examples. The dialogue includes practical applications. At work, focus on doing your tasks well, without obsessing over colleagues' judgments. In friendships, build connections based on mutual respect, not approval seeking. In romance, engage authentically, expressing desires and boundaries without fear of rejection. Parenting, encourage independence and courage in children, avoiding overprotection or conditional praise. These examples demonstrate that Adlerian principles are not abstract concepts. They are actionable in daily life. Applying Adlerian principles in daily life. By the final stage of the dialogue, the young man begins to understand how Adlerian principles can be practically applied. Courage to be disliked. Stop seeking validation from others. Accept that disapproval is inevitable. Act according to personal values rather than social expectations. Separation of tasks. Focus only on what belongs to you, your thoughts, actions, and responsibilities. Recognize what belongs to others, their opinions, judgments, and reactions. By doing so, anxiety, resentment, and unnecessary conflict are reduced. Choosing happiness daily. Happiness is not a result of circumstances, but of conscious choice. Every day, one can choose to act courageously, embrace freedom, and contribute to others. Engagement with others. True happiness is rooted in social interest and community contribution. Engaging authentically with others, without seeking approval, creates connection and fulfillment. Overcoming the fear of judgment. One of the central obstacles discussed is the fear of judgment. The philosopher explains that the fear of being disliked or rejected prevents people from pursuing goals, expressing opinions, building authentic relationships, living freely. To overcome this fear, recognize that being disliked is natural. Not everyone will approve of your choices. Separate your task from others' responses. What others think of you is their task, not yours. Embrace courage and act in alignment with your values, even when it risks disapproval. The book emphasizes that freedom and happiness require daring greatly, not comfort or consensus. Freedom from the past. The philosopher repeatedly reminds the young man, your past experiences do not define your present or future. People act in the present based on their goals, not past traumas. Holding on to the past is a choice, and one can choose to reinterpret experiences constructively. By understanding that the past is a perception rather than a determinant, individuals can reclaim autonomy and courage to pursue meaningful lives, living independently and courageously. Independence in Adlerian terms is not isolation. It is psychological freedom, being free from the need for approval or recognition, acting autonomously based on internal values, contributing to society without expectation of reward or praise. Courageous living means engaging with life fully, without hiding behind fear, excuses, or social pressure. It means showing up in the arena of life, even when risk, uncertainty, or criticism exists. The book closes with a profound truth. Life is short, and happiness is a decision. Choosing courage, accepting the inevitability of being disliked, and acting according to one's values creates freedom, joy, and true connection. By daring to live authentically, individuals step into the arena of life, no longer constrained by fear, judgment, or the past. This is the essence of Adlerian psychology. Freedom, happiness, and fulfillment are in your hands. You've just listened to Summarize. If you enjoyed this summary, support the channel by liking and subscribing. It helps the knowledge reach more people. Until next time, keep learning.